All right, great stuff. So, just a couple of kind of bits of housekeeping, I suppose, more than anything else. What everyone should be muted. If you're not, just mute yourselves for us, and it just stops any kind of weird feedback happening. If you've got a question to ask, or if something's going on, just drop put your hand up, or put a digital hand up, or drop something in the chat box, and then we'll unmute you as and when the time comes. I don't want it turning all Jackie Weaver and me kicking anyone out because they don't have the authority. Feels like a long time ago that was the case, wasn't it? So the way we've got tonight structured is we've got a few kind of thoughts from the team at the very start, and then some people have sent some questions in, which is great. And I'm hoping other people have got things to ask this evening. Otherwise, it'd be the worst Q&A because there's no Q. Therefore, there can be no A. So if you've got questions, please pop them into the chat, or just stick your hand up and we'll come and find you. If you've not got your camera on, which is absolutely fine, just use the little digital hand raise button, and we will do our very best. I'm recording it if that's okay with everyone, and then if you want to look back at it or whatever, I can share that video with you, and there might be other people who haven't been able to make this evening who can watch it again in their own time. Does that seem okay with everyone? Just give us a thumbs up. Great. So I'm guessing we've got a variety of folks on the call tonight. Some people maybe have already done a training course. Some people are thinking about doing it. So there might be different angles that everyone's coming from. Feel free to ask whatever questions relate to the syllabus. Sorry, to the subject area. If there's any weird and wonderful things that you want to know, maybe we can hang around at the end and let you know. But let's focus tonight's discussions and questions around people getting ready to turn up for an assessment, if that's okay with everybody. Yeah. Great stuff. I'm going to start just by allowing the four people we've got on the panel who are all super experienced providers of the ML Award, plus many other things as well. So I'm really, really pleased that they volunteered their time for free this evening to come and kind of support you guys with your journey towards an assessment. If I give each one of them a couple of minutes just to tell us a little bit about themselves, a little bit about what they do, because they're all active people working in the outdoors, and they're all people who are working on these sort of courses and programs. So I'll give everyone a couple of minutes just to introduce themselves, and then we'll start with some questions. So I don't know who wants to. Kath, you're middle of my screen. I'm putting you on the spot here. Would you like to go first? Tell everyone who you are.
Yeah, that was on the spot. Okay, I'm Kath James. I'm based in North Wales, and I'm an ML course director. Direct quite a lot of the different mountain training awards, and guess I'm quite privileged to be able to see people go from sort of the early qualifications right the way through to the sort of top tier of mountaineering qualifications, and kind of really enjoy seeing people take that journey, really, and particularly interested in what helps people perform best at assessment. So I think I spend quite a lot of time reading around things to help try and make that process as pleasant as possible for folks. Obviously, it's always going to be a little bit stressful when you're being assessed, but just trying to find ways to make it feel more like a nice day out on the hill rather than a super stressful event. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Thanks.
Cool, thank you. Lou, you're next to her on my little celebrity squares grid. So do you want to go next? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I'll get used to this by about the end, I think.
Don't worry.
I'm also based in North Wales, so worked quite a bit with Kath and also Adam and Mike, actually. I've been a ML provider since I think 2016, and I run about usually seven training, seven assessments every year from about March to November kind of time. And I'm involved with all of the courses. So I just like seeing how people are progressing, really, and seeing people having a nice time in the hills. And because I'm spending at least half the course with everyone, training and assessment, I get to see that nice progression as well. And yeah, heaps of people come back, which is lovely. And then my job is, for the ones that I haven't met before, how do I make them as comfortable as possible?
Cool. Great. Thank you for that, Lou. Mike, you're next down. So do you want to go next? Lovely background, by the way.
Yes, it just occurred to me there that we might be able to sell a few books. Sorry, folks, I'm Mike Ryan. I'm the author of The Mountain Leader, a practical manual. The book is actually aimed at mountain leaders, to be fair. What I noticed was a bit of a gap there. I'll probably talk more about that later on, why we did that and why it's there. But I have worked in mountain training courses for a very long time, and I'm not actually working on MLs at the moment. I've stepped back from that. I spend more time doing CPD for qualified mountain leaders, mountaineering instructors, and a bit of work with trainees as well. So formerly at Plaster Brennan, headed up the mountain training schemes there, but doing my own thing now with workshops based around, you may have come across another book, Nature of Snowdonia, and this book here. So that's a little bit of what I do now. Thank you.
Cheers, Mike. And last but no means least, Adam.
Yeah, hi everybody. Welcome to the call tonight. I've had the fortunate pleasure of knowing Matt for over 20 years. We were at university together. We studied outdoor education at John Moores, and I've also had the pleasure of working with Mike, Lou, and Mike for the 15 years I spent at Plaster Brennan. But again, similar to the others on the screen, we all now work independently. I share a providership with Matt under Mountain Essentials, and part of our job is obviously delivering mountain training courses, but I spend a huge amount of my time also delivering for British canoeing and canoe whales. So I'm a trainer and assessor across a whole variety of other sports. And I think the thing I really enjoy is blending. Can I learn in training and Nick in boat, and what can the boating side of things bring across, and I can use in the mountains. But yeah, thanks for joining us on tonight's call. It's a pleasure to meet you all, although electronically. I'm sure we'll get to know you in a short while. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Adam. You're right. There's lots of transferable skills, aren't there? Both as a provider, assessor, trainer, doing your job, but then also the people who are presenting themselves for an assessment, and they might have done other things in life, maybe other outdoor qualifications or their work in life, and those skills are not in isolation, so they are super transferable. So don't forget about that when you come to do your assessment, and then later on when you're actually doing the job of being a mountain leader, which hopefully everyone goes on to doing. Great. And Matt, thank you for coming. Adam's kind of done my little bit of an intro. Thanks, mate. I set up tonight's call because I'd seen there were lots of questions constantly getting asked on that Facebook group, and I thought, well, it might just be good if we can get together and share some ideas in a forum like this. It's not always everyone's cup of tea, but hopefully you can get something out of this evening. Please, you will get as much out as you put in. So if you, like I said before, if you kind of sit there and are pretty passive, that's fine. That's not a problem. But feel free to ask questions, because chances are if you're thinking it, somebody else is thinking it too, and it'd be really good to get those things out there. It's a really unique opportunity, this, to get some added input prior to an assessment, whether it's next week or 10 years away. The information's still as good. So I'm gonna start with a couple of questions that I'm going to pose to the team, and then I've got some that people have sent in, and then if anyone else wants to kind of come along and drop some questions in the chat box, please feel free. So it's a really simple question for the team, first of all, and that's around any top tips that you've got for people presenting for an assessment. So what things, if you had to pick a couple of things that you reckon are key for people when presenting for an ML assessment, what are some of those things? probably best to stick your hand up or kind of, yeah, Lou, go on, Lou first and then Kath. Go on, Lou.
I've actually remembered to unmute myself this time as well.
Learning in action.
Yeah, getting there. I think just come to it feeling prepared and organised. And if you're anything like me, you almost never feel prepared enough for assessments. It's hard to know where that balance lies. But if you've got your paperwork in order in advance, if your logbook isn't finished the night before, if you've reproofed your waterproofs and you've got dry bags nicely coloured so you know where everything is, it just makes you feel more comfortable and at ease. And then when the week starts, just remember that your assessor's been where you've been, where you are at that moment. They know what it feels like and they're going to want to try and put you at ease. If you don't understand something, ask. They can rephrase the question in a different way, but make sure you understand everything. So ask lots of questions. And then just do what you do. You're there because you're ready to be there. Don't try and second guess what's being expected. Do what you feel works in that situation and you're likely to be fine. And then hopefully you can start relaxing and enjoy the week.
Oh, great. Thanks for that. Like, one thing you said there is, I think is pretty important, and it's something I know I always talk about, and when I've worked with Adam, it's the same thing, is that if you're not quite sure what you're being expected to do, the best thing to do is to say, look, I don't know. Can you just repeat the question to me, or can you double check that? If you get into a mode of going, right, I'm just going to do it because I think that's what they want, and then it's not, it kind of gets a little bit worse. So no one will it won't be to your detriment just clarifying and double checking what it is that the assessor's asking for you to do. So be comfortable to do that, and hopefully that's been communicated at the start of the course from the assessment team that's an acceptable thing to be doing. So yeah, please do that. And being organised, it's a really simple one, isn't it, Lou? But it's a critical one, I guess.
Yeah, just makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I love that, comfortable. Kath?
Lou's pretty much covered everything that I was thinking of, really. Although when you said about making sure you understand what you've been asked to do, sometimes as well, partway through leading a leg, you might decide to change tactics or strategy for something because something's cropped up that you weren't expecting, and having that conversation with the assessor helps the assessor to understand why you've changed your plan, and that's then getting to understand your decision making, which is essentially what we're trying to do through the process of assessment. So don't be shy to say, hang on a minute, Kath, I'm going to change this because I don't want to walk the whole group through this massive bog when we can go around there. I mean, that's a really sound decision making point, isn't it? And it's great to pass that information on so the assessor knows what you're thinking and can understand your decision making. But yeah, all the other things, being organised, having your logbook ready, having your waterproofs, all fully waterproof, so you have as pleasant a time as possible if the weather's bad, are all really important. And going out in less than ideal conditions so that you're sort of able to cope with, rain and wind and stuff, and it's not something that you feel really gripped about, having the prospect of that might happen on your assessment, that during your preparation you've been out on days where perhaps regular people might choose to go to the cafe, but you've gone out and poked your nose into it a little bit, perhaps gone on a little walk, done a bit of nav practice, and then gone back to the cafe. So you're actually familiar with being out in less than ideal conditions.
Brilliant, thanks, Kath. And if there's something you made me think there, if there's something that you're thinking about before your assessment, going, oh, I hope they don't ask me to do that thing. Well, deal with it. It's a controllable, isn't it? Deal with it early doors, so you're not bringing that into your assessment, and it's not, using Lou's terms, it's not making you feel uncomfortable. You're not on edge about they might ask me to do this particular thing. They will only ask you to do what's in that syllabus. So if you know it and you've taken the time to kind of figure those things out, make sure you go in fully prepared. Great. Adam, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd throw my 2 pence worth. I think I've got 2 top tips that I give to people on any sort of formal assessment. And the first one is try to forget the word assessment. We all go, or we should all be going into the mountains for enjoyment purposes, and hopefully there to have fun. So if you can try and remove that word assessment and put fun there, and you're there to be assessed having fun. I think is a big thing. It's hard to do. I know everybody's got the big A word in their head, but if you can try and kind of factor that in, it does make a big difference. And the second tip that I would give you is, or I would suggest, is that we teach people about the mountains. We don't teach the mountains about people. And so it's really important that we have an understanding about the people, and getting to know the people you're with is really key to the assessment process, or to any process, whether it's walking the mountains or floating down a river. So it's not just about who that assessor is. You can forget them. You want to be working out who the other people in your assessment are, and all the other people you spend the time in the mountains with. I would spend a lot of time finding out who they are, where they're from, what jobs they do, and you'll strike up lots of mutual conversations. And before you realize it, you'll be chatting away, and you'll forget that you're on this dreaded assessment, and actually you're just probably hopefully having some fun in the mountains.
Boom. Thanks, Adam. And
I'll just, very briefly, talk to your assessor. It's your assessor's job to put you at ease, and assessors like the one on screen are really good at doing that. And don't be surprised that they'll be quite chatty. They're trying to put you at ease. Talk to them, tell them stuff, and be honest as well. If you don't know anything, don't make things up. Just tell people what you know and look for things. But 2 really practical things. 1, get a new bright head torch. Nobody ever went in the outdoor shop and said, "Have you got any dull head torches, please?" Get the brightest one you can. Don't be daft. Secondly, turn up with a new map. You don't want to be getting lost on creases on map edges. New map, top head torch. Get yourself in the frame of mind for being assessed, but talk, chat.
Great, thanks. It's nice that we've got 4 different people there, and that common theme is around relationships and understanding. And if you're not sure and you're thinking about booking an assessment with someone, get in touch with them and make time to get to find out a little bit about them, and see if they kind of match your philosophy on these things, if you want to call it that, or your outlook, and speak to other people who've been on assessments. And it's really important that you build up that good relationship, and like Mike says, that you're chatting all the time to people. Okay, great. So next question I've got then is the next part of this. What things has everyone seen on assessments that they would deem as being kind of good practice, or the things that you're looking for as an assessor? You've got all the syllabus elements, but what things are you looking out for that from the outset you go, this person seems like it's going to be okay? What judgments are you making?
I can go first if you want, Matt. I can go first. So there's several things I look for, but essentially an assessor is hopefully trying to spot trends. So that's good trends and bad trends. So if you make a navigational error, you will at some point it's impossible to have a whole week where you don't get something slightly wrong. And so what we're looking for is to support you through that process, but then also accept that it might just have been a one-off. But if we start to see regular mistakes and regular themes or trends popping up, then unfortunately we've got to investigate that. And so that's when the thumb screws turn on a little bit. I don't want to use those words, but they naturally do, because we're going to ask you to do another leg to prove us wrong, to kind of get us to the right place. And so I think the thing for me was just to make sure that you come out the blocks firing on all 4. So you're good to go. You make a good decision the first couple of legs you're asked to lead. Everything's prepped. And if you have a good first day, the pressure's off. If you have a bad day, then you know that the rest of the week you're going to have to sort of shine. So I think the key for me is make sure, as everybody just said earlier on, be prepared for the assessment, but also make sure you can perform on that first day. That being said, if you do have a bad day, or you do have a bad couple of moments, don't stress too much. Again, the assessor is just looking to see if it's a one-off. So can you fix the problem, great, fantastic. We all work in the mountains, the people here on the panel, and we will definitely have got it wrong in the mountains. We've made mistakes, 100%, and they're lying if they say they haven't. So what I'd say is, accept it, fix it, get your group off safely. That's what we do if we were working, and that's what I'd be expecting people to do if they were out with us on an assessment.
Are you looking for consistency, Adam? Are you looking for people, not being 100%, but being in that pass bracket, just being consistent and getting it on the net?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to kind of explain this, but there's a line, there's a level where we know that the pass sits, and there'll be people that work and perform way beyond that, and that's great and wonderful. And one of the worst things people do is when they're on that line or just hovering around it, they start to compare themselves with other people in the group that are maybe way up here, and they think they're having a bad day, but actually they're performing beyond that level of pass. And if you've got one or two things that just drop down, and you kind of, I need to check those little bits. We're just hoping we can bring them back up so everybody's back on that passing level. And that's how I would play it, and that's my view to it all.
I've heard people use the driving test analogies, about minors and majors, and you're allowed a couple of minors, but if you start, making them regularly, then that's not good. And if you make a couple of, big boo-boos, then it sets the alarm bells ringing, doesn't it? Purely because the job is going to be looking after people once you pass this award. So, it's the responsibility of the assessor to go, is that person going to be able to take my kids out into the hills and look after them? Cool. Right, Mike.
I'll just tell you a story, because you are going to get fraught about micronavigation, and we do our best not to just focus on micronavigation, but it happens, and you're all going to be stressed about it. I did an assessment a few years ago now, 2 candidates, not very good on micronavigation. One passed, one got deferred. What was the difference between the 2 candidates? The candidate who got deferred had 27 quality mountain days in the logbook. The candidate who passed had done the Munros. So when we say it's about more than micronavigation, it's about the bigger picture. We genuinely mean it. So as Adam says, you will trip up at some point. We want to know that you can look after people in these wild places, not just that you can find ring contours and kinks in contours. It's much bigger than that.
Cheers, Mike. Lou, Kath, anything from you guys?
Moving on from
That's right.
sorry, you carry on, Kath.
I was just going to say that don't forget it's a leadership award. So, just to reiterate what Mike said there about micronav, it's really easy to sort of focus on that and concentrate on that, but you're actually trying to become a leader, and you're actually wanting to be able to take groups out. So, for me, when I see people that are navigating and they're not leaving the rest of the group behind, and they're setting an appropriate pace for the group, and they're forming a rapport with the rest of the group, which I know is slightly weird because they're not a normal group, they're your assessment peers, but that you're able to chat, you're able to share your knowledge, you're able to walk at a pace that means that it's comfortable for everyone, and that you're able to navigate whilst doing all of that. That to me is like a gold standard for someone to be, that's above the standard for an ML. And that really is, I think, something to be aiming for in your preparation, that you're thinking about being a leader and not just a really proficient navigator. So, yeah.
Nice. That is really important to remember. Thanks, Kath. Lou?
Yeah, basically what Kath said. And what Mike said about the guy with the Munros. So if you've done a lot in the hills, you just had lots of adventures, lots of good times, it will show on your assessment. It'll allow you to relax when you're able to relax. So for example, if you're walking to a big lake or a summit or a col or something that you're going to be able to find, well, you can cruise along that part and you can have a chat to people. And then that buys you a little bit of focus time for when you really do need to concentrate later on, because there will be moments where you have to concentrate. But those people that have a good deal of mountain experience know when they can relax and it just makes them look, again, that word, comfortable, makes them look comfortable in the environment.
Matt's forgotten his mute button, but he's just about to work it out.
And that's the answer to it all, really. So if you picked up on what I've just said, then you'll pass. So, well done. Yeah, what I was going to ask there was, what are the things that are at the opposite end of the scale that you've seen that are the most kind of? I know people can be deferred or passed on lots of different things, but what are some of the things that really stand out as common things for people being deferred on their assessment, or failing their assessment at the other end?
Common
I guess
deferrals.
from
Yeah.
Go on.
From a leadership point of view, well, there's lots of different areas that people defer on, but I think leadership, navigation and rope work tend to be the key areas that people struggle with. I think rope work's something that it's almost like you can go and practice your set piece and be really well prepared for it. Whereas, and navigation you can go and practice, whereas leadership is more of a different sort of skill that's harder to practice. It's a softer skill. It's about your communication with people, how you interact, how you make decisions about managing different people in different types of terrain. And so, there are plenty of people that I can think of where they've struggled with the leadership. They're so preoccupied by the actual tying of knots or navigating to a ring contour that they've forgotten to brief the group. They've left someone behind. They're just sort of straight lining it to the ring contour, thinking, yeah, if I get there, it'll all be good. And they've totally forgotten that they're actually meant to be looking after folks as well. With rope work, they might not be briefing the group. So, it might just be one person you're asked to get up a step or down a step or something, but like no clear briefing, things that don't really work. Just assuming knowledge rather than being clear about, I'd like you to do this, and when you get there, I'd like to sit there, or whatever it is that you need to do to manage those people and look after them in an emergency rope work situation. So I think that things that are where people seem to struggle are around the areas that sort of link into leadership, but perhaps they're preoccupied by a technical skill, and therefore then unable to lead, but perhaps also unable to do that technical navigation or rope work type of skill. So,
Kath, I've just
let someone else add on to that.
Well, I'm gonna ask you a follow up. So, Steve's asked a question, and you could take this, or somebody else could take it. Thanks, Steve. It's a great question. And he's put, do you find with the update to the syllabus that there are more deferrals over leadership, and how do you define that within an assessment? So, I guess you're asking, Steve, what does that look like? Because it's not a knot, is it, or an accurate nav point? It's a more holistic soft skill, like Kath described it. So what is it? I
think that actually the updates made it clearer for candidates as to what's expected, rather than that increases that the number of people who are getting deferred on leadership. I think it just makes it clearer as to what's expected in terms of the leadership to being, and being at the standard for the leadership. So I'll let someone else add their thoughts on that.
No, we can only support what you've said there, Kath, really. I think we've always deferred people in leadership, but it hasn't always been obvious, because it's much easier to understand how you made a navigational error than it is to understand why you got to the right point, but it took you an hour to get to the right point. And our stress was about the group that you were supposed to be looking after while you went to that point. So the syllabus has made it much clearer for us to say, you didn't do that in the style of a leader. So, hopefully that supports what you said, Kath, but it is about leadership and looking after people. That's all there is to it.
it's tough, isn't it? Because it's a group of fellow candidates. It's not like Adam said before, we work on a lot of British Canoeing Awards, and you have to have real mock students that you get, you know, externally. But on this, you're looking after other people on the assessment, and it can sometimes feel a bit false, but it shouldn't do, because the leadership decisions and the way that you communicate with the group and the way you position yourself and the way you interact with people should be exactly the same as if you're working with a group of scouts or a group of adults who are paying you to take them out into the hills. So just ask yourself, what would I do if I had a group, if this group had turned up in the car park in the morning and met me and said, we want to have a great day in the hills? What would my approach be? What would my communication be? What would my positioning be? What would my, you know, interactions be? Telling them about the environment and all those side of things that creep into it. What would I do if this was a real group that was in front of me? And then you've got all the other bits that you're going to be tested on and asked to do. But you know, try and imagine that they are a real group of people, but you know what I mean, and not other candidates. There's not a pass ratio. It's not like we can only have 40% of the people pass. You know, everyone can pass, everyone can be deferred, everyone can fail. So you know, you're all in it together. So it's sometimes worth having that chat at the beginning of the assessment, going, we're all in this together. So come on, let's look after each other, and we can all get through the other side.
Something you can do to, I think, help show what Matt's saying there, like how you'd be with a real group, is vary your position within the group. I think most people on assessments lead from the front, possibly even all of the time. And you wouldn't do that if you were with a real group. So if, for example, you're doing something where you're on an easy path or whatever, you might just say to your group, right, well, let's all wander along to the lake. My nav leg's not finished there, but quite happy going at your own pace for a little bit while we'll regroup up there. Comments like that are totally fine on assessment. There'll be times when you need to lead from the front, like if you're finding a route up steep ground, you've not been there before, you're going to have to be up front most likely just to figure out where you're going, but it won't have to be all the time. And it's a nice way to show a little bit of that leadership coming through.
Thanks for that. Thanks everyone. Nice question, Steve.
I just wrap up. Sorry, Matt, I'll just wrap up as well. I think there's a couple of little things I find with assessment candidates, and I don't want to be stereotypical, but we tend to find there's outdoor professionals that turn up for an assessment, and so they might have done assessments in other sports, and they bring a strong leadership element to it. And what I normally find is they're too busy to have put in the practice. So it'll be often that they're lacking experience in the logbook. So it could be a logbook deferral. It could be that they've not been practicing specific set pieces that we would necessarily do in the mountains. So that's where those sort of people might fall short with the actual rope work, for example, or night nav, because they're too busy leading groups in the mountains. And I think the other group of people are the ones that don't work in sort of the outdoors as such, and they often let sort of basically get fear gets they get gripped. And so we're just kind of finding places where you can just kind of re-establish yourself. Remember, you're hit there to have a nice time, and those people tend to be, because they're a little bit more fearful, are they doing the right thing or not? That's where their leadership falls down sometimes. So I'd say that's a trend I've spotted over the years. And, you know, if this conversation helps, then so be it.
Great, thanks for that. It's come up a couple of times then. There are obviously requirements, aren't there? So you finish your training course, and then you're going to go through that consolidation period where you're out getting your experience and, you know, working towards your assessment. And those requirements, just, you're all familiar with them, but let's look at it. You've got to be familiar with the syllabus, and it seems like a really simple an obvious thing to say, but take time to look at that syllabus and make sure that you're happy with it, because anything on there could crop up during your assessment. You're not gonna get every single line, because there's just not the time and the opportunity to do that. But make sure you're familiar with it and you understand what the expectations are. And if you don't, find out before, because the morning of your assessment is too late in some respects. So make sure you take time to familiarize yourself with the syllabus, because that's what you're going to be assessed on. The next thing is you've got to have these quality days, these 40 log days that you've got to have before you go into the assessment, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then finally, you've got your overnight camps, your 8 camps, and your 4 wild camps. But going back to that middle one, that thing around getting these quality days in. Question for the team is: we know there's a difference between experience and quality experience, and are you doing 40 days that are the same, therefore you've done the same day 40 times, or are you doing 40 different days in novel situations in different places that are going to allow you to build that experience? So what advice have you got for trainees when they're preparing for an assessment to be able to get quality experience that's going to support them not only for the assessment, but then the day after they pass, they can go out in the mountains, can't they? So how can they go about getting that quality experience? Lou?
I think number one, after the training course, go on the mountain training website and bring up the skills checklist that you'll find there. And that breaks the syllabus down into little chunks, and it encourages you it basically explains how you can rank yourself 1, 2, or 3. And I can never remember which way around it goes, but let's just say number 1 is totally automatic skill. Through to number 3, you're really trying hard. You're not there at all with that yet. So if you go through the skills checklist, rate yourself 1, 2, or 3, and then you've got this really visual kind of thing just set out in front of you, and it's really obvious where you need to focus most of your time. So then that lets you make a plan, and plans are good because they just can keep you on track and give you some confidence that you're working along the right lines. And then every now and again, revisit that plan. And then while you're practicing, get out in different places, in different weather conditions, with different people, on your own, just lots and lots of variety. So whatever crops up, by the time assessment arrives, you'll have dealt with that issue before. And yeah, just make you really confident. Make most of any extra CPD there is around. There's loads advertised through Mountain Training Association. People like Mike are running those regularly. And that's going to help the leadership side of things, and the general knowledge side of things. It's just going to make you feel more comfortable all round. It's the word I keep on using, isn't it? Comfortable.
Nothing wrong with that, Lou. Nothing wrong with that. Cool. Who's next?
Yeah, I can leap in there. That's all really sound. For me, when you leave a training course, we will have constructed some sort of action plan. Hopefully you've constructed an action plan, and our job is to help you, give you some ideas about how you can complete it. We are really keen that you do loads of hill walking, you go to Scotland, you make sure you've been in the lakes as well as Snowdonia, etc., etc. And you got to practice your rope work, and you got to walk in the dark, and you got to do your home pavement, you got to do this, and you got to do that. And you sit there at the end of the training course, not everybody, but you sit there and go, yeah. And then you get home, and the next weekend there's a wedding, the weekend after there's something else on, then your kid's playing the first football match or whatever. You know, life gets in the way. That action plan will only work if it becomes a habit. And the habit is really, really important, not just for you, that you go hill walking every Sunday or every first weekend in the month, but the people around you. So if it is, say you live in the southeast, it's going to be quite difficult to go hill walking every Sunday. So you need a weekend a month that is your weekend for going hill walking. You've got to stick to that, and you've got to go hill walking on the first weekend of every month. But what that helps is the people around you, your family, they know not to book events in on that particular weekend, be it the first weekend, second weekend, or whatever. So the more you can get in the habit of getting away and getting in the hills, the better, and the more likely your action plan is to happen, rather than it all shuffling nearer and nearer and nearer to the assessment date. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Sorry, I'm just typing an answer to a question that's come on the chat. Definitely. Kath, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say that mountain training have really recently made the definition of a quality mountain day much clearer. So I think it's much easier for people to sit and look through their D-log and sort of, I think it can be quite handy. There's a little feature to flag. So if you like flag your quality mountain days and you make sure that they fit all of the criteria that mountain training state in their "this is a quality mountain day" statement, then you're actually making sure you've got what you need in your logbook, and that's one big tick before you turn up to assessment. And then, in addition to that, it's a minimum of 40 days. So if you can get a bit more, that's always going to benefit you, because it means you're going to have been out in more different conditions and in different parts of the country. And I think as trainers, it's really easy for us to talk about how important it is to go to Scotland. And of course, you could have 3 different mountain areas in your D-log without going to Scotland. But the thing about Scotland is everything's that little bit bigger and a little bit more wild. And the learning that goes on from venturing into the Scottish hills. Now, I think anyone who's got some bothy trips in a logbook, I can't think of many people who've not grown and developed and been in a stronger position at assessment by going and having an adventure in a place that's a bit more wild. So I think that's worth thinking about as well. Yes, it's hard to factor a trip into Scotland if you're from somewhere in the south. It's a lot of driving or a long train journey, but definitely worthwhile in terms of the development and learning that will go on by venturing into the bigger hills and more of a wilderness area than the Lake District, North Wales or the Black Mountains provide.
I'll just add as well, folks. I think it's really interesting that we've got this magical number 40. And when the board put this together many years ago, before I completed my ML, somebody dreamt up the 40 was the right number. And that 40 is important to understand that it's the average, I guess, we would work to. And there are some people that would have enough experience with 20 because they've got other backgrounds, they do other things, but the minimum is 40, so they need to start with 40. And there's other people where actually perhaps they don't learn as fast, or it's not working for them, and maybe 60 or 80 is more of an achievable kind of number before they're going to sail through the assessment. I'm not saying go and do 60 or 80 days. We require you to at the assessment standard. But what is important is, as Matt said at the start of the call, the start of this question, is the variety. There's a lot of people that walk in the Brecon Beacons. It's great, but it doesn't take you in that rocky terrain. And I think that's the one significant thing I think that is different from when you might go walking with your mates or your friends or your family on a well-made path up Snowdon, up Scafell or up the Brecon Beacons, to when you're venturing off into the proper mountains, dare I say it, the rockier peaks of the Lake District or Snowdonia, or the rockier stuff within Scotland again. So try and get off onto the rockier stuff where paths are less obvious to follow. A little bit of scrambling might be needed. You might have to put your hands down at certain times. I think that's the bit that I really look for in somebody's logbook is can they walk on some uneven terrain as opposed to just walking with lots of paths in their logbook. It's great we say that, because then as soon as you pass your assessment, 90% of the work you do will be on paths, and it won't be anywhere near that remote stuff for most people in the mountains. But that's what we require to pass the assessment, so that if it goes wrong, we know you've got the skill set to get your team out of that terrain.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, the idea is that you're building this breadth and depth of experience. So I think it was Lou that said before, when you turn up to your assessment, yeah, that's one part of it, isn't it? That's only a week, and then you're going to go and do the job however many times a year you go out with groups. But the idea is that during that experience gathering, you're seeing every possible thing that could happen, so that or variations of it. So then Kath talked about decision making. It's kind of what underpins all of the mountain training and the British Canoeing qualifications, for that matter, is this ability to make good decisions. And you can only make good decisions if you've exposed yourself to a variety of challenging environments and challenging things where things go a little bit wrong, not catastrophically wrong, but things don't go quite to plan, and you have to come up with solutions and you have to figure things out. Because come an assessment time, you don't want to be experiencing something for the very first time, because going back to Lou's term, you're not going to feel comfortable about doing that. And so hopefully if you've got enough breadth and depth of experience, you can shortcut to decisions really quickly, going, well, I've experienced that and that was similar to this, therefore I can probably do that. But if you've not got that depth and breadth, it's really hard to transition and to make things make sense of things when the unexpected happens on an assessment or in real life when you're looking after a group in the hills. So yeah, really try and put yourself out there and do things that maybe you wouldn't normally do, because it will definitely benefit you both as a mountain leader and come your assessment time. Sorry, just had a chat in the box here. So I'm just going to read Gary's question here. Mountain training say you can use Iceland or similar terrain for your UK quality mountain days. How do you feel about this? Do you accept these as quality mountain days?
I can answer that one, Matt. It's pretty clear. Mountain training will allow that up to 50% of your logbook can be presentable from overseas. But what we're looking for as an assessment team is that experience is similar to that you'd experience in the UK. So if you're walking on ice caps or high mountains of Chamonix in the Alps, that's not going to be very similar to working in the UK. If you're working in some sort of lesser known places within, say, New Zealand or other parts of the world where the terrain, the weather systems are similar, that's really useful experience. But the official line for mountain training is it's 50% maximum of your logbook, so 20 days could be from overseas. I would say that those people that do have the bare minimum, though, do struggle with that. But anybody else want to chip in, feel free.
Yeah, I'll come in there. It's really important with the 40 quality mountain days not to see it as a hurdle or a tick box. It's kind of been evolved over the years that if you've done about 40 quality mountain days, then that might be enough experience to be ready for assessment. We would tend to say aim for more. We know life gets in the way, but if you have an action plan that's got 60 QMDs in there, then you might get 40 done. But really and truly, your assessor will flick through your logbook, make sure there's 40 and move on. And we're not that interested in the QMDs. The QMDs are your business for you to get the experience to come for assessment and be ready. We'll only start interrogating those QMDs if you're a bit borderline or you're not quite ready. And then we'll start having a look in a bit more detail and go, you haven't really got 40 quality. Do you see what I mean? So try not to think of them as something that you're doing as a tick box or a hurdle. Try and think of them, that's just a suggested amount that means you'll be ready when the day comes for assessment.
Thanks, Mike.
Oh, sorry, can I just add a little tiny bit there, Matt?
Yeah, please.
If you are using any overseas days, your assessor might not know what happened on that day very well, probably won't if it's in some obscure place. So it's really helpful for that part of your logbook just to add a few bullet points in the description part of your D-log. And you can just copy those directly out of the what makes a QMD bit of the mountain training website. So things like I navigated off marked paths. I was in poor visibility for most of the day. So a couple of those kind of sentences to go with the route is really, really helpful in helping the assessor agree with you that it does look like a QMD.
Thanks, Lou. Anything else on that kind of consolidation period? Anyone got any questions or anything they want to ask before we move into the sent in questions part? Feel free to unmic if you want. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I on the what Lou was just talking about. I've recently, 2 weeks ago, did a day trip on my own, well, a day and a night. I did a wild camp in really bad visibility in pure moorland with no visible features, approximately 3 kilometers all round. but it doesn't fall into any of the mountainous areas that are mentioned on the training site, so it doesn't count. But you have to be really hot to get the, you know, in your nav, because I think I would say visibility was down to about 15 to 20 meters, and plus it was raining as well, quite a lot. So, but yeah, so that's the thing that I don't understand. I counted 430 meters, but it won't count in my as a QMD in my logbook or D-log.
So if someone else wants to answer this, feel free. My thoughts on that one, Gary, are that what Mike said before, that those QMDs are two-part. One is it's a prerequisite, so you've got to get the 40 in, but the bigger part of it, the bigger percentage, is actually you developing your skills to be out there as a mountain leader. And what you were up to there, I would say, was probably very useful experience for you. Really good at developing your nav and your understanding of the environment and all those things. It just doesn't fall into the QMD for the mountain leader bracket, but it's still very relevant experience. And you can still put that into your D-log, and people will look at it and go, oh, great, he's got all these, but he's also got all this as well. And they won't kind of dismiss that. They'll look at the kind of bigger picture, but you still need to get those 40 prerequisite days that kind of tick the box. But going out and doing the days that you've just done there aren't a waste of time. They're super valuable.
No, for me, that's going back to what somebody else was saying earlier, that I consider it something I love to do. And that's why I'm into this mountain leader training thing, because I've been doing it for years and years and years, basically. So I find it, you know, I've got literally hundreds and hundreds of days and nights like this. But I understand what I need to do for the QMD. I was just trying to point that, you know, regardless of all of that, that doesn't count. And like you just said, yeah, you can put it down, but it's not count, doesn't qualify as a QMD on your D-log. So yeah, so I understand what from that point of view, but it's just, but the people, I think it is, people might not realize how much experience you've actually got, because they might say, oh, 40 QMD is not that much, but all the other things you've done are not considered.
No, but
they don't count.
They should build a good picture for you.
Yeah.
You know, when you're looking through it, they will, and again, like Mike said, the chances are, because you've got that depth and breadth of experience, then your logbook isn't even going to become a consideration for you, because you're going to perform so well on your assessment that it's kind of like, well, that's great, he's ticked that box. And you know, we've looked at all his other elements that he's done during his assessment, and they're all great, so you sail right through. So don't let it worry about that. They will see it. You know, the numbers come up on the D-log when we go onto candidates pages, and you know, it's quite often you'd have a little scan around and you'd go, oh, they've got the 40 days, but oh, let's see what else they've got up to. You're right, it doesn't count as a tick, but it builds a picture that you are an active person who's getting out there and has got a wide range of experiences. So, you know, always definitely put those things into your logbook, for sure. I don't know if anyone else has got any thoughts or wants to add to that.
Well, just to say, it'll show when you're doing your night nav, because you won't be stressed. You'll be just all over it. Cloud comes down, it's not a problem, is it? Just carry on. And that's really where it matters.
Yeah. Under pressure, though, you will react differently, don't you? As opposed to being on my own out there with all the time in the world and no one else to worry about. I could just take my time. All right, this is where I need to go.
But you're doing everything that you possibly can there. You're going to be ready. You're going to be used to it. It's not going to be a shock.
Oh, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Great question.
Thank you.
We've got another one come in. So, you know, just stick your hand up or just start chatting. So I did my training in 2020 have there been any changes to the syllabus? And then two questions specifically. Is the South African abseil still a part of the ropework element? And has the river crossing element had any changes? Lou.
So teaching and leadership have more of a priority now, so it's worth reading over those sections. And no change to the rope work since then, and no change to the river crossing since then. It's the simple answer.
Nice, thank you. Another question come in. On my I should read these. It's just like a radio show, isn't it? I should read it before I say these out loud. But let's go with it. On my training, there was a presentation element mentioned. Have you got any advice or comments about this aspect of the assessment? Here we go. Is Mike's Nature of Snowdonia cover to cover a good way to go? Mike, do you want to answer that one?
No, it's a fair point to ask. I don't know everything that's in Nature Snowdonia. That's why I pull it together in a book and I carry it in my rucksack so that I can remind myself of things in there. What Nature Snowdonia does is illustrate bits of the environment. What you need to be thinking about is the totality of the place you're in. Why does it look like it does? How did it get like this? What threats does it's going on? If you put it in a very simple terms, you're typically leading people from urban areas in the countryside. I think it behoves you to understand something about that countryside and the way it works, and share with those people what's going on there, why it's the way it is, and what issues it faces. So it's much more about that bigger picture than knowing individual species. Having said that, we were talking about something, it was yesterday, and we walked past some heather and we walked past some bilberry, and it really wasn't very interesting. But then we find some dog vomit slime mold, which is far more interesting and exciting. And what I'm looking for as an assessor is not you to tell me everything about everything, but if you could go, oh, that's different, that's really interesting. I don't know what it is, but I know that's bilberry, I know that's heather, but what's this? Then you start a conversation, you're showing an interest in the environment, and that where you've passed, then we just chill out and forget about ring contours.
I think it's going back to the presentation point of view. It's the idea that we can get ourselves across to a group of people in front of us. So it's not necessarily that we've got to sit down and use converse with a group of people that are going to spend some time in the mountains. I think of it and liken it to the fact that you might have a group of people, as Mike said, from Coventry or someone from outside of one of the national parks. And if you've got somebody that's struggling at the back, then you might just infuse the rest of the group with a little side story about the industry you can see around you or the practices of wall building. It could be flora and fauna. But the idea of while you're doing that and you're infusing these youngsters around you, the person at the back's had a chance to catch up, catch their breath, and they might even be infused. And then suddenly it kind of takes that stress off that person at the back being the last person, the slowest person. So I use it not just to tell people about the area, but I use it as a tool to lead people in the mountains so that I'm not just flogging them around the place, as it were. So that's what I would see the role in understanding and knowing a little bit about the mountain geography, really, the mountain environment. And I think the presentation skills, don't get het up about that. The idea is it's just you've got something of a little bit of interest. It could be totally unrelated. Now, I would love it more if people talked about the rivers that we're seeing or certain things that are kind of, the attractions that Snowdonia have brought in the last 15 years with the zip worlds and all those things. How's that having an impact on the environment? So it's just something of interest that brings people together around the mountain environment. It doesn't have to just stick to flora and fauna, although obviously Mike's book is the Bible and it's one you have to go and buy.
And again,
your presentations, sorry, Matt, really quickly, your presentations can also be practical. So it's whatever suits you best. It can be more like a speech style format, or I can think of some amazing practical examples I've seen. So one that jumps to mind is someone chatted all about dry stone walls, the different techniques, the history behind them, and then gave us all a selection of these rectangular shaped biscuits. And we had a dry stone wall building contest using our biscuits balanced on our maps. it was utterly brilliant. And it just helps sometimes make the person giving the presentation feel a bit more at ease, I guess, when they're getting the others to join in. So don't discount that. It doesn't just have to be a speech.
Great. It's a controllable, isn't it? It's
Some of the best sort of presentations I've seen have been about where people have told stories. So people love stories. You know, so whether that's myths and legends of the area that you're in, but I think storytelling is quite a good way of sharing that sort of information and showing that you can present stuff, but in an engaging manner that involves the group, and they get sort of into the story that you're telling. So that's some of the best sort of presentations I've seen have been people just telling stories about myths and legends in Snowdonia or wherever we are. Yeah.
Right. Some great examples there. I think it's something that they're putting more. I was on a provide a CPD day the other month, and Mark was saying that they are putting more and more emphasis on that kind of, you know, teaching and learning and that ability to communicate. So it's a controllable, isn't it? It's not something you're just going to get sprung on you. It's something you can look for. You know the area you're going to be going into roughly, so you can do your research, find out about it, go prepared with some things. It shouldn't be a shock to you that you're going to have to do those elements. So yeah, it's a controllable that you can look after pre-assessment. Great. Okay, questions are flooding in. Right. For rope work, can you confirm it's direct belay and can you confirm it's a direct belay and indirect belay is assessed with no use of carabiners?
Matt, it might be worth getting that person to explain that.
Gary.
If you don't mind.
Hiya, Gary here. I was just reading earlier on one of the ML training sites. There was a bit of a ding dong. Someone saying that they've been on a training course and weren't shown to use a carabiner, and then they went on an assessment and the carabiner was included on it. So that was kind of my question. Do you do, because it was my understanding it was just rope and not a carabiner, but I see someone nodding there. It's Adam's nodding, I think.
Yeah, that's me, Gary. Yeah, as far as I'm aware as well, carabiners aren't part of the syllabus. As a qualified well, I wouldn't be showing that on a course or an assessment course. I'd be expecting people to be able to use the rope. Yeah.
Okay, can I just ask one other question? Because I've done my training probably like 13 years ago, and I think the syllabus has changed now, and the SA kind of chair, the South African chair, is no longer used. Am I correct in saying that?
No, it's still used. South African abseil. Yeah, it's still part of it.
Okay.
You might be thinking of the Thompson knot, which was more like a chair. So a Thompson knot had lots of loops that you lowered someone down a cliff. That's out because we're not lowering people down cliffs. We're just helping look after them while they're scrambling down. So all we have now is a rope around someone's waist. But the South African abseil is definitely in.
Yeah, you're correct. My mistake. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's not, you were never assessed on doing a South African abseil. You're assessed on getting yourself down a cliff safely. It's just that typically the best way to do that is a South African abseil. That's a bit of a pedantic point. Somebody talked about a refresher earlier on, a question we missed, Matt. And if you did your training 13 years ago, it'd be well worth going on a refresher and just asking some of those questions to any of these guys.
Yeah, I just add to that refresher question as well. Talking about whether you need to do it with your assessment. With the assessor. It's unlikely that you'll actually spend the time with a refresher. Sorry, start question again. Should you do your refresher training course with your assessor? And the chances are you're also going to have an assessor working alongside you that you won't be on the refresher of the course. So let's imagine Lou's the provider of the course, Lou's the course director, Lou runs a refresher training course. and she might run half of your assessment, but there'll be the other half of the assessment that's run by a second assessor, and they are unlikely to be on your refresher training course. So I don't personally think it makes a difference who you do your refresher training course with. I'm a bit old school. I didn't do one when I went through my scheme. I think it's a good use of time now, but there's a big must, and that is that you must give yourself time between the refresher course and the planned assessment, because there's nothing worse, and we've all probably had it as assessors here on the screen, of somebody turning up going, show me everything I need to do. I did my training course years ago. I want all the updates. Oh yeah, my assessment's in a month's time. And between now and that next month, I'm going on holiday to Barbados for a week, and I've got the kids' football matches every Saturday. You've got to give yourself the time to practice what you're shown or what you're talked through on that refresher training course before turning up for the assessment. So I would say 6 months is a good sort of amount of time. Anybody turning up with sort of 4 or 6 weeks notice, it's just not enough, because there may well be changes and you may go, oh, that's not enough time to fix a problem then. Anybody else got stuff on refresher courses?
I agree with you, Adam. I think if you turn up a few weeks before when your assessment's booked, you're really putting yourself in a challenging position by not giving yourself opportunity to actually practice any things that have been highlighted as areas where you need to up your game a little bit. So yeah, just make sure if you're going to do a refresher, and I think it's a really sensible thing to do if your training course was some time ago, that you give yourself time between booking that and booking onto an assessment, so you've got time to address any areas that need to be have further consolidation.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just looking at the chat. Question from James: do you have to do a presentation on your ML training too, or is it just for the assessment? As far as I'm aware, you don't have to do one on your training, but some providers might build that in just to kind of give you the opportunity to do those things. But I don't think it's a mandatory element of the training course. You could also ask to do one if you wanted to, so you got a bit of opportunity to practice and get a little bit of feedback on that if you wanted. David's asked a question. I know we have mentioned scrambling, but it wasn't addressed at all on my training. Can you elaborate on what is expected with regards to this element of the course syllabus? Good question, David. Who wants to take that one?
Do I go for that? Scrambling's a funny word. I think it means different things to different people, and it often gets interchanged with the word mountaineering. And actually the syllabus talks about steep ground and going into areas of steep ground and route finding your way through and appropriately looking after your group through that sort of terrain. So it could be on up to sort of grade 1 scrambling terrain where we're not planning to use the rope, and it's the sort of terrain where you can spot people through up little steps to manage their safety and look after them. You might do a little bit of coaching on movement on the walk in to make sure that people are ready to actually deal with a few little rocky steps. So yeah, I think it's easy to focus on the word scrambling when you're looking up for that area of the syllabus within the syllabus. It's referred to as steep ground, and on training and assessment we take you to places where the ground is steeper, where you might be using the sort of techniques that are required for a grade 1 scramble where there's no planned use of the rope, and that you're able to access the tops of most mountains in the UK as a summer ML. There's very few that you would need planned use of the rope to get to the top of in the UK. You'd have to go to some of the ones on Skye for that to be an issue. So yeah, terminology sometimes makes it a bit confusing. The words that the syllabus use are different to perhaps what we use in common chat, and then different communities will describe different things with different words, or even those interchangeable. Sometimes I talk about mountaineering and then sometimes I talk about scrambling, and I'm meaning roped scrambling rather than grade 1 scrambling where a rope's not required.
There's a lovely definition. We haven't really talked about it, but there's a download called the Candidate Handbook, and on page 2930, I think it's talks about steep ground. I can read it out very quickly. It says, steep ground, as described by mountain training, is complex terrain where a walker's experience is weaving a safe route walkers' experience in weaving a safe route is demanded, and decisions around managing safety on exposed steps or sections will require judgment and foresight. Steep ground may include broken, often vegetated ground with a fair proportion of visible, potentially loose rock where the consequences of a slip or a fall might be serious. And thanks, Kath, for that definition as well in your head.
There you go. Thumbs up from David. He likes the answer. Couple more questions. Can you please describe a typical day-to-day itinerary for an ML assessment? And I guess everyone's is going to be slightly different, but it follows a theme, I suppose. So I want to take that one.
Yeah, mine starts. I wake up every morning about 4 o'clock. I go for a 20-kilometer run, and then I go back to bed. No, what do we do? It's on an assessment. It's a 5-day process, and you'll be required to be assessed and watched by 2 different assessors. So often you'll get an assessor that'll go out with you for the first 2 days, and then that will change for the last 3 days. I think it's important to say that we could all run with complete flexibility, because often the weather dictates what's best to do there. But the general run of the course would be that you'd probably spend a day having a bit of a shakedown, getting your head around your map, doing a little bit of simple navigation after we've done some introductions at the start of day 1. Day 2 tends to be a slightly bigger, what I call a QMD. So I'd actually go and walk a big day out with people. And along there, I might, both those days, I might throw in a little bit of rope work just to see where people are at with their rope work. And then the last 3 days tend to kind of be called the expedition. And that's normally a couple of nights under canvas. Along there, we do some various different types of navigation, some on 1 to 25, some to 1 on 50,000, maybe at Harvey's 1 to 40,000 maps. There'll be another chance to revisit rope work. There'll be a chance to maybe visit river crossings, and obviously the night nav in the evenings as well. That's the general plan. No, I'm sure we could all talk for hours about various variations on that. But does anybody else want to add things they do differently on their assessment courses? Have I summarised that well?
You appear to have done a good job.
The first
picking up at that point that it's 5 days. It's a long time, and you can go out and you can practice the nav and do a couple of hours of nav or do a bit of this and a bit of that. But actually, the thing that can sometimes be a challenge for people is 5 days worth of focus and concentration. So giving yourself an opportunity when you're building your experience to be out for multiple days, so you're getting used to physical fatigue, but also that kind of mental fatigue as well. That's the best way to prepare yourself. It'd be like going and doing a couple of 2K runs and then saying I'm going to do a marathon. It's a big jump, isn't it? So try and prepare yourself as best you can by building up to that point where you're spending 5 days working pretty hard, and you're going to be physically tired, and then on your expedition you're going to be doing night now, so you've got that sleep and things like that, or the weather's poor and you're cold and all those different elements. So yeah, try and expose yourself to as much of that before your assessment as you can. What would be a preferred rope for a candidate to have on an assessment? I'm guessing you're talking length and diameter, not a specific brand or colour on that one, Sarah. Anyone got any thoughts on rope suggestions?
I can jump in very quickly.
I'll stick my head up. It's not something we're that excited about, really, is it?
Oh, Mike, you go.
What I've been doing is doing a sort of post-assessment workshop whereby we've taken a few risks, and we've taken a 20-meter rope out and a 10-meter rope out. We've taken a thin rope out and a thick rope out, and I just had a real chance to play with different ropes that we might use. But to be honest, for assessment, half a climbing rope's your best bet. 30 meters, 8-9 mil, so you can handle it. That's your best bet.
And it's the size and weight in your pack as well, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah,
I'd
there's a
agree
couple of
with
things.
Mike there. Like if you go any skinnier, it's really hard to manage the rope well. So like it's easy for it to slip through your hands and things like that. So yeah, like a 8.9 to 9.2, something like that. Don't go less than 8.9. That's my thoughts on it. And 25 to 30 meters.
It's worth considering, if you are a climber, then using something a little bit thicker, as Cass talked about, to practice with. Because if you do get it wrong, and things like wearing gloves, putting the rope around your rucksack, all that gives you that little bit more body protection. If you use a skinny rope, it does sort of wear through fabric layers and it can harm you a little bit. So if you've got a thicker rope to practice with, use a thicker rope. The way up obviously is on your assessment, you've got to carry it, and so just bear that in mind, that you might choose something a little bit thinner if you've got that advantage. If you're out to buy one, then Kath said that 8.9, 9.2, 30 meters is bang on, really.
Well, Lou, you look like you were reaching forward to unmute, or were you not? Did I misread that?
Yeah, I was just going to mention about exactly what Adam said. If you are using a thinner one, think how you're going to protect yourself, but that's been dealt with now.
Cool. Gary, do you want to ask this question about the map? Because I don't.
Yeah, as someone mentioned the Harris maps earlier on, and do we get assessed on using Harris maps, or is it whatever map? So say, for instance, I'm going to do it in Scotland and I know what area it is, and I can buy a 1 to 25,000 Explorer, which I'm happy and more comfortable than using that than the Harris maps. Like, as the assessor's not going to say, well, no, I'm taking that off of you and I want you to do it on the Harris map. Does that make sense?
I don't want to pick
Yeah,
that.
whoever you're doing your assessment with should tell you in advance which maps that they'd like to use during the week. It might get quite complicated if different people are using different maps at the same time. So the way that I work, at least, and I think most people would be the same, is we'll all be on one sort of map, and then there'll be some prior warning. Say, for example, right, tomorrow, make sure you've got your other scale of map ready. I use 1 to 25 and 1 to 50,000 OS maps on mine. There are some providers who also use the Harvey's maps, but you will get told in advance. And if you haven't yet found out, then just ask the question with enough time to buy whichever maps you need.
Brilliant. Okay. I have to come and do my assessment with you then, Louise.
Good choice. Okay, cool. I've got a couple of questions that were sent in, and then this is going to end up, we're going to finish on time. This is great. So Phil, I'm not seeing Phil. Maybe that's Phil. Sent the question, which is, what are the best ways to practice night navigation on your own? You'd like to take that one? Any top tips?
Okay, then.
Sorry.
So someone had to step forward, didn't they? I think you can probably split that into two parts. So some people might be concerned, like confidence-wise, and feel a bit wary to head out by themselves in the dark in a unknown place. If that applies to you, well, then think carefully about the area that you're choosing. So, for example, you could choose an area that's kind of enclosed by roads, for example. So wherever you walk, in whichever direction, you're going to get to the safety of a road, and then you'll know where you are. Can also use technology to help. Even if you're not relying on an app on your phone, it's a nice reassuring backup just to keep in your pocket, and telling someone where you've gone as well. If it's more about kind of the skill side of things, for me, in poor visibility, I'm just doing 3 things really. I need to know the direction I'm walking in, for how long, and the story of the land. So some people talk about D's there, the direction, the distance, and the description, however you want to describe it to yourself. If we've got those three things, then we'll know where we are. And in some ways, it's easier than daylight then, because you haven't got all of the extra clutter to confuse the situation. So distance, direction, description. That's it. Job done.
And using some of the technology that's out there to kind of support your learning as well. So GPS or OS Locate or something where you can take that, and then once you've got where you think you are, then being able to get something out and just double check, yeah, am I where I think I am? Yeah, great. And it can be a good little bit of positive feedback for you, or a lesson learned if you're not where you think you are, and try and figure it out. If you do find yourself somewhere where you don't expect to be, then go through that process of saying why. Don't just go, oh, I got that one wrong, right, on to the next one. Try and go back a few steps, not necessarily physically, but go back a few steps and say, what mistakes did I make? What things happened along the way that led me to the point where I got this wrong? So a bit of kind of reflecting in action as you're doing your practice would be really useful for you.
Yeah, I'd add a couple of things as well there, Matt, would be maybe walk the route in the daylight before. If you're going out somewhere, go and work and spot a few features so you get a little bit more familiar, and then you could always then go and interpret that in the evening if you're really unsure. That's one way of kind of giving you a bit more success. And the only other thing I think people fall into nowadays, we all use phones. Let's not get away from the fact, but we would be expecting you to use a map and compass on your assessment, certainly for the large part of it. So by all means, use your phone to double check. But what I'd encourage you to do is do a couple of legs, then check your phone. If you check in every leg you do with your phone, it doesn't help you develop strategy. And that's what we as an assessors want to see, is that have you got some strategy to run the next leg? Because you're not exactly sure where you are. You think you are. And if you do the next leg, it will definitely take you to the lake or to that big re-entrant. So try and think a couple of legs at a time, and then double check your phone or your GPS data. Would be a good way, I think, to kind of help develop your navigation.
Thanks. I'll get through these last few questions. Do you have any top tips for relocating in a reasonably featureless area? That might be a bigger conversation than what we've got available to us. But any top tips for relocating in featureless areas?
Yeah, nowadays I use my phone.
Sorry, we're shaking our heads, being a bit
flippant
about that question. It's a massive question, and I don't think we can answer it in a little soundbite. That's the sort of thing we need to walk through. But keeping on top of where you are is probably the easiest, shortest answer. Is just, but what's a featureless area? We might not ask you to relocate in a completely featureless area. We will usually have something in mind that it's like, yeah, there's a bit of a ring contour there, there's a bit of a gully there's a bit of a stream junction. We'll ask them to relocate here, a change in angle in slope. It shouldn't be a really featureless area. So you might be overthinking that one, but the best answer is to get out on a refresher and just talk it through on the hill.
I was just going to say, like, the reverse of what Lou said for navigating. So you're observing the terrain that you're walking through. You know how far you've traveled, so you might have timed it, or you might have paced it, and you know what direction roughly, and then you can start extrapolating stuff back from there. But as Mike said, it's much easier to cover that by doing it practically out on the hill with someone.
Any advice for reducing glare from head torches on laminated maps? Someone's already offered a solution to get a low lumen setting on your head torch, but anyone got any amazing?
Yeah, there's a quick answer. Most head torches come with different. I will usually walk around with mine on the lowest setting because the battery lasts longer, and then I'll use the high beam just when I need to, when I want to have a look around and look at something. So if you've got it on the low beam, it should be okay. And I need reading glasses, and I can do it. So Shouldn't be too bad, really.
And on that point, make sure you've got spare batteries or you've got a spare head torch with you. There's nothing worse than losing it and then
Spare glasses as well.
yes.
I had an assessment once where somebody lost their glasses, and it was awful for them. They really struggled. They did pass, but had a really tough time.
Yeah.
I think we've got a really good question here, Matt, to answer, which is, where's the best place to get a decent breakfast now in Capel Curig?
Of course, you'd know the answer to that one, wouldn't you?
Shock news, eh? Chamois Cafe is closing. For those of you on the call that don't know that,
Mm.
a bit of a shame. But you might know more detail.
Not officially, no. They're definitely still there till January, and it's a case of watch this space. It might change.
Yeah.
Carl's put a comment on saying regarding Night Nav, most of the MTA regions have lists of free Night Nav sessions or workshops that are available. So yeah, go and get access to those. It's really useful. And to finish, a couple of folks sent some questions in by email. We've already done the Night Nav one, and then Dominic said, when you're given a leg to lead, are you expected to plan it and then go? Or is it expected to discuss the plan with the assessor before you start? So let's make that the last question of the evening.
For me, that's a question, or it depends. I often say on assessments, we use the word depends a lot, and that exact question will depend exactly on where we are, how long we are into the Night Nav, or whatever the leg is all about. I will sometimes ask the candidate to come to me and tell me what their leg is, and then that helps me. If I feel that they're going to wander off course, I've got a bit of an idea to understand what their strategy is, so I can at least try and make some sense of it. And that helps me because maybe they can't follow a bearing, or because their pacing is inaccurate. So I've got a bit of a heads up before I go into that leg. Or I might just go, yeah, go for it. Let's see what happens. And that's because I'm either confident they're going to find where they are, or if they're not confident, they're going to show me some skills to show me where they are and how to get back on track. So I would say it's one of those ones. It depends. I like to vary up. I don't have a standard approach. I think what is really important we understand. I don't know whether this question is about Night Nav or general navigation. But it's general navigation. Yeah. So it's about just looking after your group. So the key is, while you're doing that, what are your group doing? Are they kind of in the frame? Have they got a clear picture and a plan of what's going on? Don't just leave them wandering behind you, and then suddenly one of them's disappeared to have a quick pee or tie up a shoelace, and you lost your group. So it's about the group first, then the navigation leg.
Cool. Any other thoughts on that one before I just double check? I suppose I'll ask David's one, which is, I've never been to Scotland and I'm from the southeast. It's around the corner, isn't it? It's made out to be far harder. Is it worth heading out with an ML on my first outing into the Scottish mountains? I guess that's another, it depends, isn't it?
I'd just say start easy, use a guidebook. Mike's recommended Walking Highlands website, and then you can just build things up, because there are plenty of really accessible mountains in Scotland where you'll start to get that confidence to then start exploring the more remote regions. So yeah, if you're feeling confident in North Wales and the lakes, head up to Scotland and go to popular places and enjoy that and build up your confidence by getting out under your own steam.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'm gonna bring that to a close. We finish at 9 and it's 5 past, so not that bad really. I hope that's been a useful hour and a half for everybody, and you've got to ask the questions that you wanted to, or you've discovered new questions that you didn't even know you wanted to ask. I'm gonna follow this up with an email which has got links to everybody who's been on the call's website. I've put in the chat, but Mike's kindly offered a discount on his book, so it's Monday Special. Is that right, Mike? That's Monday Special is the discount code. So if you want to head over to Mike's website to get those, it won't work on Amazon or any of those sort of places. but yeah, I'll follow it up with everybody's details, and you can go and see what they're up to, see what courses they've got on, you know, whatever you want to do with that information. But thanks very much for this evening, for giving up your time to come and join the call. And I will post a link of, I'll probably put this on our YouTube page if everyone's happy with that, so other people can get access to it, because all of the questions were really really good questions that I'm sure other people will go, that's something that I'd want to know as well. So if there's anything else, feel free to hang around. If you need to leave and go and get on with your evening, please do that. That counts for the panel as well. If you guys need to get off and do whatever you need to do, I'll hang around and answer any questions if people have got them. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, folks. That was brilliant. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for hosting as well. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great time out there, and best of luck with your assessment.